are we being recorded too?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So first on the agenda, I guess we'll do some. Do we need to do introductions? We all know each other. Renee, Michelle. And then Sadie, Michelle. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So we've all been around. So today we're going to go over the Equity Implementation Charter and review and make more edits. When I took our edited version to the council last couple weeks ago, it's hard. I guess it's technically.
It seems like it was just like a minute ago.
Yeah, it was last month, but technically it's only
the end of the month. So
yeah. They said go back and make it stronger and put some accountability into it. So we'll be reviewing that and then looking at the child care resource and referral RFA materials too. So I guess we'll go ahead and just jump right into the charge. So they heard, there it is, they heard our call to want to actually get some accountability to connect this to not just a checkbox of things that something that we're doing, like, oh yes, there it is, equity, we said it, but to make sure that we're doing it. So I was incredibly excited. And then also I would like to talk about how we put a vice chair into our charter, because other subcommittees or committees of the Early Learning Council have a vice chair. So I would like to figure out how we build that into here so that we have continuity between the full council and the committee should the chair ever need to take a leave of absence. Or I'm open to discussions about how you would like to handle a leave of absence too. So, yeah, I guess we'll just jump right in and do that. So up on the screen, we had what we did, advise ELC on ensuring implementation of the equity lens. Go ahead.
do you want me to kind of frame up the conversation around
Sure.
what happened at the council?
Yes.
So I was at the council meeting with and as we were there, I guess a couple things rose up for me. Just like you mentioned earlier, there was a piece around the council made a comment that they specifically named this committee the Equity Implementation Committee in order to put that emphasis on implementation. So they wanted us to, one, strengthen how that can be executed within the work. There seems to be like a lot of interest in having more touch points with the committee and the council, whether that's through reports, whether that's through like decisions, things of that nature. And there was also just a piece around how are we discussing other priority populations within the charter. Those were the things that came up as well. I made a comment around like the Oregon Equity Lens, how the Oregon Equity Lens discusses all priority populations that you can think of across the board, and they all align with, protective classes, for federal guidelines, and they were just like, well, from this, you may not be able to see that, so how do you strengthen that language? And I think also strengthen the use of the equity lens, because again, people go through the questions and they actually use the lens and all the blank statements that, would lead you to look at the questions in a particular way. So those were some of my takeaways from it.
Sorry.
So did you get a sense that the accountability included applying the lens in those questions, or what do you think is by accountability?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of wondering.
Well, I guess from my interpretation, I think there was just a bigger piece around like possibly what's being brought to the Equity Implementation Committee. What does that mean? What's the level of like feedback or reporting back to the Equity Implementation Committee? Should there be? How will the council and like the division utilize the Equity Implementation Committee, and what does that mean? So are you just going there? For me, it's kind of like this is beyond just going presenting information. This is kind of like in the planning stages for me. And I always use the equity lens or the Oregon equity lens. That's something that you use during your strategic planning process and then the actual implementation or execution of the plan. So it's kind of like what's our multiple touch points and around that work, and how can that council help support that work being infused in all aspects of the division. So we can, I mean, like we can like kind of do our best, guess and then put that in there, and then they can say yay or nay. That's what they were thinking about, but that's kind of what my feel from the conversation.
Yeah, and then I have some specific notes. They wanted to remove the term begin to work and replace with work with, and that is, wait, where is that? 5, is it under C? Guys. Establish? No, it's in there somewhere. Hold on. Let me do a search. And then, as Lillian was saying, like, make sure that we call out all protected classes and leaving rural. Strengthen thought partners by adding in community partners in addition to hubs. And they also said something about move it away from just being thought, but like actual action around how we work together with community partners and the hubs. Find a warmer term than service user.
Yeah.
And then provide language around assisting the council on holding the system accountable to meet equity. And then strengthen the focus on action and implementation.
I have a question about accountability in our role. This is probably the central question we're wrestling with, but it's not clear to me how much what we discuss here, how much of that is like, oh, okay, that's what you all talked about.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do. Or like how much teeth does it have, or how much do we, should there be a mechanism for us to like vote on specific recommendations that we really want to push forward? Because I feel like we have a lot of really rich discussion, and then I'm not quite sure where it lands in terms of, how things going to change, if it's the same thing.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's the tricky part that we've been trying to work the system with. It used to be that the equity committee reported out at every meeting. Every committee reported out at every meeting, but because those meetings are so arduous, they cut the committee reports, and now we're supposed to submit just our notes. I don't feel like that's effective specifically for our committee. I think it's effective for other committees because they have more seemingly tangible things they want to see. So like a best beginnings committee report is probably talked about more, and so I've been advocating to have at the very least equity come back and be the reporting committee, because that's supposed to be the overarching support for our system. We haven't been able to get very far, but we keep pushing, because the committee report is all of our great notes, but then what happens with it?
Right. And I think, in that, it's part of the consent agenda. People may or may not read. Yeah.
If we're being honest. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't always get everything read. And I like to be. I like to try to be an overachiever, but it's not possible. So yeah, like how do we set an expectation for them to hear and implement? And I think that's, review disabilities. So maybe monitor progress against measures of, do we add, we had the joint meeting with the Measuring Success Committee, right? And then I've also received a request from Janet. Janet's not the chair. She's on Best Beginnings though. She said, hey, we'll need to, she's like, she thinks that there's something that we should have a joint meeting with Best Beginnings. So maybe we build, is there a way to build into the language, more joint meetings with the other committees to ensure that the lens is being applied across the board instead of it just being a one-off on certain programs or reports that they might be looking at, but it's something that just the practice.
So you and others, when you were there and they talk about action, we like to talk about that sometimes. We don't quite sure know what to do.
Right.
I think about action in years past is that subcommittees have done a review and comments, if you will, about a particular policy or a particular program or a particular budget. It's benign, but it's still getting their advice. There's application of the lens and those questions and all. There are meetings with other groups to have some kind of joint something come out of it.
Right.
Are there other things in your mind that would constitute action that would sound more than talk? I think discussion is healthy too.
Right.
In and of itself.
I think that's where I'm struggling because I believe that members of the council have moved, even since September, on giving the committee the ability to build in some accountability. When I presented in September to the retreat about maybe even including outside advocates and inviting them to come and talk to, and I gave the example of preschool promise, where sure, that's a nice idea, but when the legislation went through, there was no equity lens applied to it. It was just, and then the governor, both the previous governor and the current governor signed on to it. And sure, what's the line between we're not the boss of the governor is the boss of us, but like how do we ensure that there's that connection if the governor says this is a priority piece, that equity lens has been applied. And there was a lot of discussion about that and how what's our role, because we certainly can't tell advocates what to do. And I think, but we can invite them and have those discussions so that, after the fact, we're not talking about how something isn't what we wanted it to be, but how we can help shape it before it happens. And so, I welcome any ideas on how do we bridge that gap and then set it up in our charter so that when we're no longer at this table, the next group of people that are can continue having those relationships and informing how policy is made to make sure that it has the equity lens applied.
So that looks like that's part of that could be part of letter C, or a sub-bullet of letter C. It says we want to advise the committee and the division on developing all of these other pieces, but is that another thing we want to help them?
Sure, but
or is that like a policy piece more, and it should be a separate?
I think maybe it should even be a policy. Yeah, it's a separate, because it goes even outside of the division and is inviting other partners and players to work with the.
Is it something like, could it be something like inviting, so we've got whole joint meetings with committees, equity lens staff. Is it inviting members of governor's education staff
Governor's education
quarterly
staff,
or something?
Well, yeah, or governor's education staff,
I don't know if that's getting.
community advocates. You know, because one thing I kept getting feedback on was that, well, we can't make them do anything. Well, no, we can't make.
It's all about influence. Nobody has any control.
Right.
But if they know we exist and they come regularly, is that helpful?
Yeah.
And is that helpful to be part of the charter?
Carol, is that what D is supposed to be about? I'm not saying it's supposed to, but D talks about listening, looking for the keywords, vetting, feedback.
Yeah, I mean,
perspective.
yeah, because one of the big points we've made over the last couple of 3 meetings was that community collaboration piece, and that's part of the.
I think that's what I hear.
Yeah.
Talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, community broadly defined
Right.
of advocates and voices and players.
I mean, we could. I don't know if we go so far as to, sure we have that open invitation, and in my position, I work with a lot of the advocates currently, and so it's easy for me to kind of know what they're up to and say, come present to the equity committee, please. We'll make time for you. But I don't know if, like, in the future that looks like staff time. Sorry, I don't mean to assign you work, but like when bills get dropped, going through what applies to early learning, and then find out who, like ask the legislator and the chief sponsor who put this in. Can we have a conversation about how the equity lens should be applied to this? Because I don't think anybody that's putting in any early learning legislation has ill intentions. I think that they all have the best of intentions to try to get kids and families what they need, but then it just perpetuates what's already happening.
So are you talking about things that are dropped by the early learning division, or?
No, I'm talking about outside. And I know that, if they can certainly say, no, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
That's what I'm curious is, like, can we build that into how do we build that in and get away with it?
Right. That's kind of what I'm asking you.
I don't know, maybe this is my being naive, but it seems to me that even if a bill doesn't originate in the early learning division, like the early learning council and early learning division is going to implement the work and live with the work if it becomes legislation.
Right, and that's exactly what happened with preschool promise.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So it would seem to me, if I were on the council or in the division, that it would be helpful to have this committee have some input first, in that development stage of the legislative process or the bill or whatever stage it's at, so that we're not doing this later and having to clean up or answer to stakeholders who are saying, hey, what about equity afterwards?
Right. So I think my concern is we can do that, certainly. Anything that we decide, or by we I mean ELD decides to drop, I think we've already built a framework enough that we know that that'll come here first, right? So what do we do about when Children's Institute wants to do something, or Education Northwest wants to do something? How do we build in a lever for that, or can we? Are we allowed to? How do we?
Or can we invite? I mean, maybe
Yeah.
we can't force them to come, but
Right.
that we put out our intention as part of our charter to keep on top of that, to track those and to invite, so that we can have the dialogue. And yeah,
You touched on it a little bit ago, that was really key, is that if the sponsor wants a better bill, they would appreciate our review and comment.
Right.
yeah,
Whether whoever is the originator, it could be Children's Institute, some legislator's got a sponsor, right?
Right.
And we can make sure that anything that comes out of ODE, we have a review and comment opportunity, responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Other than what I hear you saying is that if you could get the sponsors to think of this as an asset, do they pass in the bill?
Right.
Yeah.
And we provide, there's no requirement that it's just an asset opportunity.
So could we build into, for accountability and action, build in an expectation for committee members, even if there hasn't been an opportunity to weigh in at the, have a conversation at the committee level, but to go and to lobby and testify on a bill and say, we like the core concepts, but this is, we believe that this, should this pass, or, should this be entertained for passage, we should have a conversation around how the equity lens has been applied, and to make sure that it's providing for our families and children furthest from opportunity.
So I'm just gonna. I thought maybe instead of trying to squeeze it in up here, because I think priorities might be different than accountability. Is that fair? And then have a separate accountability piece of the charter.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I don't want to hold people accountable, but
right. No, accountability. Like accountability or action in accountability, or is it
more around like develop an accountability structure when we're like, I mean, for the early learning division, we can review that, but for other I don't know, agencies, organizations that are putting out legislation concerning early learning, you're inviting them to the table for support around reviewing the document with the Oregon equity lens to strengthen work that's entering into the early learning system.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Does ODE do that with other things that come out of ODE? The bill generating mechanism inside the big department has its own review system before they drop a bill through the sponsor maybe. I was wondering, does ODE broadly do an equity lens application, do you think?
I believe they do. However, I'm not in all those rooms, so.
Given that we're a division of a huge department.
Right. I think our structures, our equity structures are probably because we're smaller, we've been able to be more nimble in the way that we've implemented equity over the last 3 years, and I don't know that ODE does a specific framework around all educational bills.
It's a fascinating notion. At least when I'm in COSTA, and some of the advocacy groups are really strong about building equity plans for certain populations, and it comes to that some kind of application of the tools, values. Anyways, just curious as to where we sit in the bigger world. Because I would suggest that the council could say anything that comes out of the division and out of the council gets reviewed here for simple review and comment of the equity lens or whatever values you think are most poignant.
And I feel like that would be a great kind of decision-making point to bring to. I mean, like if that's the direction we're going, that would be a great decision-making point for the council to be like, hey, is this something that we can include or not include? Kind of along those lines. And I think it works in dual purposes. It provides opportunity for the council to hear voices of the equity implementation committee and hear, these valid points.
And so either we would have to virtually be able to review some things, just the go-to meeting or whatever, and other things would be able to talk about it with people. You know how crazy it gets in April and May.
Right. Sometimes even crazier.
On June 8th is when it really happens, right?
So I'm sort of typing in what I hear. Obviously, I can go home and make it sound more charter-y. But so I'm hearing develop an accountability structure for legislation that is introduced from ELC and or from outside partners that impacts early learning. Any policy that comes out of the ELC will be reviewed by the Equity Implementation Committee for adherence to the Oregon Equity Lens. Should we say something like open door policy or open invitation to community partners working within the early learning system to, we don't want to say thought partner, we all hate that phrase, I think.
It's already worn out.
So worn out. What I'm trying to say is to be that they know they can come here to work through their ideas.
It's a dialogue, it's a conversation.
Yeah.
it's an opportunity to share stuff. Sorry.
How about partners working within the early learning system to help ensure we're all reaching the goal of helping those furthest from opportunity, or so that we.
I would just argue that with the advice from this group, and I'm not saying I have to be doing it, the group, you guys have good rich history, is that advice from this group should bolster, should improve, should make better, whatever you all work on.
Right.
You all being the person out there crafting a new stuff around.
Right.
I mean, because here's the deal, it seems to me, is that, whether it be human services or education, we're always crafting new stuff. And it's almost always that the equity part of it gets tagged on after the design is pretty much done.
Right, and then it's nearly impossible to actually.
Well, it's just the train is at the station and all the metaphors that, side.
Yeah, I really want to, I want to put it
Up front.
up front.
Yeah, so let's say, for instance, the hub wants to do something new about prevention of ACE trauma with toddlers, whatever that is, whatever the strategies are. Well, the dynamic about ACE trauma is it gets compounded or magnified by race and poverty, right? And so maybe a hub would come here and say, here's what we're thinking about doing.
Right.
And what do you think? Here's our tenets, and we would give, it's just advice, it's not control, it's just comments.
Right.
Right.
And that they would say, oh, when they go to their funder, they go to the Oregon Community Foundation and say, by the way, our design here is embedded with the Early Learning Division's Equity Implementation Committee.
Right. But do we vote on a recommendation then, that we endorse that, or, should we build that in? Is that like, cause
you can have a lot of influence short of endorsing.
Right.
That's my point.
okay.
Endorsing gets you into another messiness.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
At least it can. Excuse me, I was
No, that's okay. I'm thinking, that we could say something like, offer review and comment to community partners developing an initiative or a bill. But I think that the question about whether or not we endorse, I think, is an important question. If entities might potentially want to see this as a way to get legitimacy for their work, like because if we review and comment and they don't change anything about it, but they say it was reviewed by the, then great. I wouldn't want the name of this committee to be used to support work that hadn't effectively
Addressed it.
But I don't know if we want to get into the business of endorsing, and that's kind of a big deal too.
But I think that's where I got the most amount of, I'll just call it feedback. And so at one point I was like, I don't want to be the dictator of equity and early learning. I just want to help make sure that we're moving the marker, as we like to say.
Mm-hmm.
You want influence, but less than control.
Right. But I think also there's a piece around when just because someone brings something to the table and we provide feedback on it, I was like, we are here to support and bolster whether or not that foundation is the greatest foundation. I mean, we can only provide so much, but I do see your point where you also don't want the committee to be used as a way of legitimizing work, whether or not the advice or feedback that was provided is actually implemented. So I guess for me, when I'm thinking about for the early learning division where plans come through, if we vote or place recommendations, having that group come back to show how that recommendation was built in, where is it built in, if it wasn't, the rationale why, and I feel like that would be a nice framework internally.
That's really good thinking, because recommendations are stronger than comments.
Mm-hmm.
It's less than
An endorsement.
I love that. That's very good.
And I feel and I don't know how would that process fit in if we're inviting community partners and other organizations to do the same thing? Because I do believe there has to be some structure behind that, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, we provide some feedback and then we never hear back. And I feel like there has to be some type of report or some type of, a kind of, hey, this is where it landed or where it didn't land.
Right. And that's where it would be helpful if there was a way for us to report out in the larger council, because if we do have a review or recommendation, say for just to keep using Children's Institute recommendation, and they know about it, they can then use their sphere of influence to help them get where we need them to get.
And we are doing it on their behalf.
Right.
And at least with the Children's Institute, it gets political real fast.
Right.
These are ours and every other town's.
Right. So our little committee is, doing it, but if we can pass it up the chain, and then we've got this bigger, gubernatorial appointed committee that's like, oh, wait, we see some equity issues, right?
Hi. Hi there. Good morning. Hi.
No.
Wait, really?
Sounds good.
I think somebody just joined us on the phone.
I think it's Margie. It's going to be time for her in about 10 minutes.
Okay, yeah.
Margie, is that you?
Yes, I'm here. Hi.
Hi,
Margie.
Great.
We're wrapping up we've got about 8 more minutes for our part here.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. I've got plenty of emails to do, and I'll listen if you don't mind.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Okay, so I want to go through and make sure that we have, oh yeah, sorry. Sue, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I apologize for being late. Sue Miller, I'm the new chair of the Early Learning Council, and just here to sit in and get a little sense of the work that you're doing for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and I apologize. I have to leave at 10:30 for an 11:30 meeting in Seattle.
Excited to have you there. I know that it's a show, but I was like, oh, on the inside, I was like, yay. So we're doing our LIN Equity Charter review and editing. We've added an accountability section. And so, they kind of build in what our expectations from ourselves as well as others, and some are just invitations, not expectations, I guess. And we just discussed, how do we, we could say, oh, we had partners come in and we've reviewed their policies or ideas, and what does that mean versus recommendation or endorsement. And we've landed recommendation because endorsement might be too strong, but just reviewing is not strong enough. So, yes, and I like that. Ensure recommendations are made clear to the ELC. I like that a lot. So I want to make sure that we get to the other pieces. Does anybody have any ideas about a warmer term than service user?
We can find where it is and we can figure it out.
These are the people these are people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Service user isn't a term. It meant service the user's voice and influence.
What?
Right? Isn't that what that meant?
No, that means like the voice and influence of like participants. That's at a Teal Network we refer to both of them. But I don't know if that's relevant in every setting.
Great. Well, so
Are we specifically talking about children, families, and providers?
right. Yeah, let's just say children, family, and provider, voice, and influence. Thank you.
Thanks for being a part of it.
And then
I should spell that. Oh.
it's the whiteboard rules where spelling doesn't count.
Right.
Is that a thing?
I was. You're just trying to get it up.
We're trying to get it on your notes and be done.
Okay, so we had remove begin to work with and replace with work with. You found that?
Yeah, I found that.
Okay, great. They really wanted us to weave in rural all protected classes more clearly.
Yeah, because I think when we say equity, some people use educational equity, but it's really around that, how are we providing that support for families and children and providers. But I also think, I'm wondering how to balance, how to put that in there, and then also for me, it was almost a piece from like the Oregon equity lens. Like, I don't know how much of like articulation that we're putting from the Oregon equity lens within our charter, right? Because it's almost a need of there. When I posed that, it was almost as if like, I didn't know that was included in the Oregon equity lens. And I'm wondering around the support for the early learning system to understand what's within the Oregon equity lens to help strengthen that.
Should we give a definition that alludes to the equity lens? We could say, I kept thinking during this part of the conversation about the conversation that we had with the Measuring Success Committee and how we were asking them to define and continually pull out what it means for furthest from opportunity.
Right.
So maybe we should echo that in equity. I'm just trying to figure out where it would fit in.
Is it culture? Do you think right up in the top of the culturally responsive practice? Or we can say,
I think we should have it up in the top.
Are you thinking that the values in the Oregon equity lens is where the real juice is, as opposed to the criterion and step stuff? That's later on in that document. I'm trying to find it. I don't have it readily available myself. I mean, equity lenses are being crafted by practically half the school districts in Oregon right now. And some of it is a point of values and beliefs and promise and that stuff, as opposed to tools that you would apply. I'm just sorry for thinking out loud.
Well, they're both in the equity lens, like you pointed out. So I think here I want to say yes and. But I think that's why when we talked to the Measuring Success Committee, we kept, because they had said children furthest from opportunity, and then we asked them to go a step further and say, and call out what that actually means. Like Black, Brown, Native, children with disability,
impacted by poverty.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering if it's like if this is a mission, there should be a mission statement that accompanies the work that we're doing in order to articulate that. Because I do see your point around, I do believe many school districts are developing equity mission statements. And then there's, in some cases, there's this jump from the mission statement to, steps to actualize that. And there's not the same thing. And even with the Oregon equity lens, like you have those, like the 8 questions. You have all those components and then the 8 questions. But those 8 questions in and of itself is not a process it's not a built-in process. You utilize those questions to inform the process that you're developing. But just those questions alone is not going to develop a process that a organization or can go through in order to actualize those things. Because you can just answer those questions, but is that built into your planning execution? That's a no. So I'm wondering, how do we separate the need for like the actual process of actualizing the equity lens within this document? Because
so that's our plans and our accountability.
Yeah.
And then I think, we just need to have a very upfront definition up at the top.
Yeah, I just found it, and it has like a dozen different kind of belief statements, and then it goes through the 8 steps. It says these core questions can guide your work in strategic planning. It doesn't particularly talk about a linear or multi-linear process. It just says things you all ought to do. I was reading the one from Yakima, the Yakima School District recently with the Yakima Nation nearby, and they were very definitive in their kind of an action plan about what they're going to do with these kinds of questions, how they're going to apply them.
Yeah.
And it's everything from HR to where the money comes.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm just curious as to what is it about the equity lens that really bolsters the charter?
I'm wondering about maybe like a purpose statement in that first introduction to the charge. Like the purpose of our work is to support the Early Learning Council in eliminating disparities for those furthest from opportunity. By that we mean ending the group.
That's good.
Say it again, Sadie.
I know, it's like, we're
The purpose of the Equity Implementation Committee is to support the Early Learning Council in removing disparities.
Yeah, eliminating disparities.
Eliminating disparities for those furthest from opportunity by defined as,
and then we name the groups that were
yeah, and then
we want to say children of color, children with disabilities.
Why? Thank you.
English language learners.
Increasing economic disparities.
Yeah, I know. You apologize, Sadie.
We should probably call it rural.
So I would say economic disparities, children in poverty, family poverty. Yeah.
I have a question. Within, for like, and Sue, this is a question for you. For the council, isn't there a definition of the children? I believe you read that up during your speech at the staff retreat. So is there like a definition that we already have in place?
Yeah, I did read it, and where did I get it from? Yeah, it was children of color, children with disabilities, children living in poverty, and
English language learners.
English language learners. Thank you.
So I feel like it would.
But that didn't include rural.
I'm wondering about that question then. I mean, is
It comes up.
it children in poverty in rural settings?
Right.
Or is it all children in rural settings?
I think, because
I think it's
access to, I mean, if we're going to be literal about furthest opportunity, which we talked about last time, is if you're in a rural community, you may not be able to access a Head Start or just even a quality preschool or easy access to school. And so in some cases, it's less about the money and more about the literal geographic. Yeah. Maybe we should call it geographic isolation instead of rural population.
right, because I think that you can even have geographic isolation in an urban setting.
That's the case.
Yep. Yeah. Okay, so just time check. It's 9:48. And there's Miss Margie on the phone. So.
Yeah.
And there's one more thing that I would like us to consider for this. We've been doing a lot of work, well, within the early learning system, we've been doing a lot of work working with the federally recognized tribes in the state of Oregon. And right now, coming down the pipeline, there is a there's a development around tribal consultation plan, and we had for the federally recognized tribes in the state of Oregon, there's a government-to-government, federal government to a federal government relationship, and there's certain duties that are delegated to states in order to execute like for example, education, and we are required to do consultation, tribal consultation with any plans that will significantly impact tribal communities. And I'm wondering, how do we put that as a feeler in our minds to even have that, to think about, like, if there's anything that's coming down the pipe that we would have to seek formal or informal tribal consultation on.
So can you boil that down to one term, one phrase?
Well, I feel like for me, it's kind of like when I think about the 8 equity lens questions, there's a nice equity lens question would be like whether or not this requires tribal consultation. So I'm wondering, like,
so should we put that in accountability?
Yes.
Yeah, so put that as a, so ensure recommendation, and then
Just write tribal consultation when needed.
So there's a policy being developed right now that's coming out of ODE that's being finalized. We're doing a lot of work, like with Early Learning Division, we're doing a lot of work to support hubs and understanding tribal consultation and working with the federally recognized tribes. And I do think that has to be something that we consider within our,
So I want to go back to the top. Okay. And I missed that opening discussion. Number 2, celebrate diversity.
Mm-hmm.
That bothers me. It bothers me.
Tell me more.
And the reason why it bothers me is because celebrate diversity for what? And it seems like it's one of those, they call it dangling participles. Something that, you see on a poster at a party, celebrate diversity.
What does that mean?
To celebrate diversity to do what? Or is it?
For me, it's the value and the assets of the communities in which we're serving. And it's celebrating as one component of it, but it almost seems like it's a one-sided component where we want something to be put on display in order for us to be like, "Ooh, this looks cool," rather than we're valuing the assets that these diverse communities bring to us, and we're working to ensure that we see those assets we value those assets within the body of our work, which I know it's
yeah. Celebrate diversity almost sounds a little bit tokenizing.
Yeah.
Cliche. Yeah.
So acknowledging the value that diversity brings to the early learning environment. Is that closer, Joyce, to what you're trying to get to?
So what I'm thinking, like we talk about culturally responsive practices. So why? So we're using the culture, the assets that children bring into the environment as a bridge to learning or as a bridge to opportunity.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I feel like diversity waters it all down. That word by itself. I feel like specifically we honor the cultural, the values that are inherent in the culture of the children and families. That those are resources for teaching and learning. Because celebrating diversity feels like, Black History Month celebration or.
I'm kind of curious. The sentence with the colon that starts with student elders talks about assisting the council and understanding equity from a data standpoint. To help the ELC, kind of a churchy sentence, but it would appear to me, and correct me here, that those are the 2 or 3 things, Eva, that we got to do. And I'm not urging celebrate diversity right or wrong. At the end of the day, we will be remembered by these 3 things.
Great.
That appears to me as what that sentence is trying to tell us who we are and what we're supposed to do. Maybe I'll see what I mean? Sorry.
I see what you mean. No, I totally see what you mean.
At the end of the day, I think we want to be remembered for recommending policy. You were mentioning earlier having influence with other organizations. Eva, I'm looking at you as a chair. You're the influencer. I'm just curious as to I'm sorry for backing up. I bet you wrote that sentence with it was really good 6 months ago. Now I don't understand it. Right?
Oh, we didn't even write this. We didn't write the first part. We inherited the first paragraph.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, part of the problem. Yeah.
Who gave it to us?
The previous incarnation of the equity committee. I know Callie was on it and Charles, but
Right.
so.
Was this the equity subcommittee, and then it turned into the equity implementation committee?
I'm not sure because I just
there was
joined a year ago.
Yeah, because there was the development of the equity subcommittee report, and there was the entire committee, and I believe after that was created, then the development of the equity implementation committee worked in order to engage the body of work that they developed within that report.
So, we also, so we don't need to present this to the ELC until January, correct?
Yes.
So we can work on it some more next time too.
Well, I'll work on what we've got now. Give me a couple weeks. I'll be gone all next week. And then send this back out to you in a cleaner way with better writing. And then we can take another crack at it in December.
Carol, can I make another?
Yes, ma'am.
No,
Of
number
course.
2.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have good phrasing in my mind yet, but what I feel like it should say is, it's not just recognizing the value and benefit that diversity, for lack of a better word, brings, but that those things are imperative for children to learn and to have self-worth and grow into healthy adults. So I don't want it to sound like, we're being, progressive Oregonians that are like doing this diversity thing. Like, this is what children need to be successful, right? Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. I was at Grant High School, and a teacher was saying if her goal is for her kids to come out of her classroom being empathetic to the world around them, which I think is what you're trying to say here. So that works for me.
So we have number 1, setting policy or recommending policy. Number 2, highlighting the value, like you just expressed, that little value added. And number 3, I'm going back to you, Chair, Madam Eva, is that there's something about, I hear you talking about, there's something about influencing the early childhood business, the industry of early childhood, and it's all these parts. And we ought to have an equity influence on our work.
I'm so glad that people are able to translate my thoughts.
So you just keep talking and we'll figure it out.
Okay.
That's a really good point.
And if we could, at the end of our year or 2 or 10, say that we did those 3 things, and that we could be proud of that, that's our work.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to tell you that over all the commissions that I've been involved with a long time, there's always been an equity committee that had the same struggle and never really was able to do much.
Right.
I mean, there's back as far as Goldschmidt. You remember?
Hey.
Or, even when we started with IKEA, there was some sense that kids with color didn't say that thing. We're somehow falling behind. We didn't know much. But,
Okay. Great. Well, I'll save that as a parting thought. All right. So I will save this, what was saying, and then we'll come back to it in December.
Will everybody be able to join us on the 20th of December?
Is this the 20th of December?
20th?
Come on, y'all.
oh, yeah.
The week before is legislative day, so I can't move it.
Yeah.
So
Oh, you only got one? Yeah. Okay. Do we want to bring Margie in? Not keep on early time. Margie, Miss Margie, are you on the phone, and do you want to be on video so we can see your lovely face?
I am on the phone, and yes, I can be on video. I don't know if the face is so lovely, but yeah, let me get it up here. I I have a little bit of a struggle with my screens when I'm using the webcam, so it'll just take a minute.
Okay, no problem. So just a reminder, Marcy's here to talk to us about the CCR&R request for proposal, which Joyce is. Oh, yeah.
So Carmen isn't joining us today because we are talking about this, and she works at a CCR&R, so she wanted to be very clear that she was recusing herself from this discussion to not cause any problems during the RFA for her CCR&R. We're still waiting for Margie to do technical.
Hi.
If I pass this,
I think Dawn's still going to come in.
oh, I guess I should read this on.
It took me a minute too.
Thank you.
There's a whiteboard now.
It is, and it's great. All of your.
Hi, hey Carol, can you see me?
No.
Hmm.
Do I have to do something? We all know how great I am.
Well,
We need to share our webcam. Did you make the little webcam?
Oh, there she is.
Hi.
We can see
now
you.
I can't see. Okay, now I can't see you guys, but that's okay.
That's okay. Share our, so, yeah, there you go.
So did you mean to make me the presenter? Oh, there you are.
Yes. Here I am. How do I do that?
You go up to the speaker.
Which
or
one?
go to the people.
Yeah, right there. Okay.
And then you right-click on Margie. Oh, she is a presenter.
Oh, Marcy, you're the presenter. You're good to go.
Oh, you want me to be the presenter? Okay.
Yeah, if you want to share, yeah.
Okay. So how would you like to start? We've got 3 primary documents. What would be best?
You start wherever you want.
Wherever I want. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think, let me get my screen up. Like I said, I have a little bit of a struggle when I use my webcam. So let me know what screen you're seeing. Do you see the evaluation rubric in front of you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm kind of thinking the best place to start, so it's going to take just a minute to get it up, is with the funding formula plan. Shall we start there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So thank you for including me in this. And before I start, I just want to say, as I was watching and listening about the purpose of the charter of the EIC and seeing the definition of children furthest from opportunity, I was really thrilled, because I have to say that was one of the things we as a team talked a lot about as we went through our this RFA, and that was wanting to have a really clear description of children furthest from opportunity. So we weren't always sure if we were bringing in all the children we really want to focus on, and you just covered it. It was with that definition. So it was it felt a little bit of a mishmash to try and get really what our focus wanted to be without that clear definition. So I appreciated being able to see that. So the funding formula, here is how it all lays out. The Early Learning Division had developmental guiding principles for funding formulas, and the first bullets that you see here came from a memo from Megan that was, I believe, designed by, by the ELC and Executive Committee. So really how we really look at our focus on reducing disparities, improving outcomes for children of color and children living in poverty, the method to balance basic infrastructure needs, so really looking at what would be needed in rural communities versus more populated communities and their caseload. Also, the methodology should show appropriate funding for infrastructure to operate the program, and I'll be touching on that in a few minutes too. And of course, connected to our contractual outcomes, and transparent and based upon objective, publicly available data sources. So the team met then to really design the funding formula, guiding the funding formula for the R&R specifically. So the first bullets are overarching for the Early Learning Division contract across the board. This one, the second set of bullets, is specific to child care resource and referral, and these guiding principles were developed by the funding formula committee. So making it as logically understood and not unnecessarily complex is key. Reflect the R&R core services, which are services to providers and services to communities, which includes collaboration. And then the guiding principles above and application of the Oregon Equity Lens. The services should be delivered in efficient, effective, and financially feasible manner. So really trying to stay consistent across the board with that. And then also one of the things that's really clear as we work through this and as we've done R&R over the years is that we have very remote rural communities, and we want to be sure and reach them and know that regardless of how far away they are, they're deserving of the core services. And then provider recruitment, training through professional development, and retention is a primary core service. And then linkages with partners in the community, all that involve the early learning system in each community, so that's a collaboration. So kind of key questions that we're looking at today is, I'm going to show you two scenarios. So which scenario really reinforces us focusing on our priority population, which would be children furthest from opportunity, and then what might be the unintended consequences to each scenario. So looking at the two scenarios, I believe you've probably all seen this. I have a giant workbook that has the data for every single county and the breakdown for every single county. And I use pretend numbers to see what it would look like. And pretend numbers meaning as close as possible to what we think it might be in the next year. But the scenarios include the individual child care professionals, so our early educators, and that includes across the board the DHS listed, the license exempt, the recorded programs, the licensed programs. So everyone, we could gather the data on individual child care professionals. And 60% for the first scenario, 55% for the second. And the second one, if you kind of look at all of these data points, the second scenario actually raises the percentage on the diverse population, so diverse languages and cultures. The percentage increases a little. So we have the data for all the providers representing our diverse languages and cultures. One is at 10 and 15%. The population of our children, 0 to 14, this was data we could get. Children who are determined at risk, and we actually try to say at promise now, really shifting our language. And we were using the at-risk definition that the Early Learning Hub used and their data that they gathered. And then children with special needs through birth through 17, because we know children with special needs, even if they're in their teens, need child care. So what we have in that whole scenario right there, scenario one, is services to the early learning workforce for professional development at 80% of the budget. So that would be the full professional development of recruiting, training, and retaining our early learning workforce. And so breaking the data down this way. Our second goal or service is services to communities, and that's the collaboration, and that's 20%. Then that is broken down in the two scenarios to show the square miles of regions based on the travel that would need to be done. The total number of counties and hubs, again, because we know some R&Rs have 2, maybe 3 hubs that they work with, which will involve more work, more committees. And the same with the county. And we decreased it in the second scenario because we increased the diverse populations of children 0 to 17. So these data represent all children except those identified as non-Hispanic white. So we increased it in scenario 2 for the stronger focus on diverse children receiving services. So the impacts on page 3, both scenarios will involve a funding formula floor. So we will, those areas that have a denser population receive quite a bit more money. So because we're working with populations, so those in the more remote areas will need a funding floor. Hi. Now I can see all of you, I think.
Yeah, a little closer to all. Sorry, it was Ms.
Are you
across from me?
Oh, okay. Hi, Joyce. Yes, I know Joyce. I remember. And can everyone hear me okay? I forgot to check.
Yeah, great.
Okay. Okay, great.
Lenny, did you have a question?
Oh, I would just, my name's Lenny. I work for Gladstone School District, and I was curious about the diverse populations variable being placed in the collaboration column or group as opposed to the upper column. I presume you had a rationale one way or the other. Just curious about that. My thinking is that working with diverse populations is, at least in our little school district and my work with commissions over the years, it's really a professional development question. It's a deep professional development question supporting kids of difference.
Right. Well, that was a great question. Thank you. The rationale under the professional development is we would be working directly with the child care providers so that the intensity of services and based on where they are on their professional development continuum and their needs, you know, whatever, where they may have higher needs for services and the children they're serving, you know, if they are furthest from opportunity, how they may need extra support in their program. The reason we put the diverse children under the community collaboration is because it's working in partnership with the early learning hubs who are also responsible for all of these children. So we would expect that we would be working with all of those children in partnership with the early learning hubs, and the early learning hubs would be ensuring that these children are receiving the highest quality care. So that was the primary rationale. It could go either way, but we kept the focus in professional development on the early learning workforce itself. Did that answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I hear you talking about the diverse populations does complicate the work of a local hub, and therefore
yes.
It's a collaborative workload, I guess.
Right, right. And we would expect the early learning hub, well, and it's part of the collaboration and part of the community plans, even in the early learning hub, that they're working in partnership with the R&Rs, even at this point, to increase the number of the early learning workforce who represent diversity, as well as who are caring for children furthest from opportunity.
So this is Leanne. I have 2 pieces. I think one, there was this one framing piece. I'm wondering, there was complicated the work of the early learning hubs. I'm wondering how do we flip that as really looking at how are we, like, by serving these providers and children, you're enhancing and improving services to those areas. So just one framing piece. And two, I had a question on services to communities and collaboration. So for the data points where it's 0 to 17, if there was, do we have data that looks at the 0 to 5 population? And if we did you see a drastic shift in the percentages around children and children that would represent the diverse population?
In birth to 5, the diverse population, the only data that the team was able, the only data the team was able to find in diverse populations was this. Although we could certainly do more searching. And I think you're bringing up a good point, Lillian, because it really is quite a bit different. I mean, we have a higher percentage of children under 6 who represent diversity. So that's something that I could get with Ronnie and the team to see what we can find, and Tom, George as well. So to see if we could find that. One of the rationales for this age as well was the fact that, we know we're serving them if they're special needs, that they're receiving child care, and we're doing also after school care. So that was one of the balances of, even though we're early learning division and we work with children birth to 6, we know that our focus is school age as well.
Okay. So I do think I do like the inclusion of the 0 to 17. However, because we know that there's going to be such a large shift between the 0 to 6 population, I do believe if we have the data, it's warranted to show that comparison, because I do believe this number can be misleading.
I think, I have it called out separately, but include the 0 to 17.
U.S. Census reports can do that 0 to 5, and then beyond pretty easily every 5 years. I mean, you can build a population curve with that.
I think our hub used the Medicaid data to try to differentiate among age groups.
Okay, great. Thank you. And then, Lillian, I just wanted to mention, as far as the enhancing the early learning hub work, I think we'll see that more in the scope of activities. This is just to kind of break down how we're going to fund the R&R.
Oh yeah, it was just a framing piece in the room where we just as in the group, it said it would complicate the work having more diverse children and families being served by the CCR&Rs, and I just wanted to shift that framing to if we're really looking at how this is fundamentally enhancing the work by ensuring that we're serving these providers and children that we identify to be diverse and linguistically diverse. So it was just a framing.
Okay.
Say, Mark, you had one other point about the collaboration piece. One of the challenges for some local communities, I coordinate the D3 community for what we call the McLaughlin area of Oak Grove, Jennings, Oregon City, and Gladstone. And in that region, our R&R tells us there's 100 different registered providers. And while I haven't knocked on every door, I've knocked on many of those doors, my sense of the R&R work, or at least in the old approach, was that the number of providers was a complicating workload dynamic. I'm of the mind that you move diverse populations to the PED column and look at the number of different providers and different stratifications of providers, let alone family and friend care, that are in the mix for an R&R to be concerned about. Do you see my points around the number of potential customers? In a little strip of North Clackamas County, I can count 100+ preschools, child care providers, family care providers, etc., which is, at least for us, trying to run a P3 sub-hub, as we call it, it's really, really complicated because there's just so many players.
Right, and does that include the family friendly?
No, it doesn't, because it's usually not registered, so you got another 100 or so.
Yeah.
And I wonder how many languages are represented.
Yeah, and those different business models and all that stuff.
Right.
I'm just advocating that the collaboration factor, I'll just be bold and say the collaboration factor is complicated with the number of potential customers in the market.
I think some of the providers might be reached through the families by choosing what their setting, and some providers might just already be like the what are we calling the family friend and neighbor now, the
recorded child care.
Yeah. So I think
regulated subsidy.
Yeah, regulated, and then you have the registered, certified, and
right.
So I think it's a combination. I think it can't be we're only doing this one track of finding where they are.
No, I understand that. I'm just looking at the formula funding. Formula, if I was going to run an R&R, some of my more complicated, more difficult work is catching up with all those customers.
Right.
Yeah, and you're bringing up a good point. We had a lot of that conversation in the funding formula committee, and actually broke down an intensity of services based on. We actually aligned it with Spark and the 5 kind of categories of Spark, from starting with licensed or actually before licensed, then licensed, and looked at intensity of services, which has really led to the individual child care providers versus programs, because you can have a center, even though that center may be a 4-star, they have several staff, and each one of those staff are in a different place on the professional development continuum, so each one will require different intensity of services. So that's part of why we wanted to show the individuals versus the programs, because it didn't really capture what services could end up being, because they're going to be, it is complicated, and it really involves, meeting them where they are and then providing them with the support they need to get to success.
And I have one more piece as we're looking at possible areas within the funding formula that would increase funding for particular populations, or the distribution of different things that you have outlined here. Has there been anything built into when those funds are being used, how they're targeting those particular populations? For example, if you receive additional funds, or you receive, because of the funding formula, you receive these funds connected to the fact that you have a population of providers that are linguistically diverse, and you receive like this allocation of funds, will there be any accountability on whether or not those funds are used in order to specifically support those specialized needs in which we've identified within the funding formula?
Yeah, there'll be a work plan, and then along with that work plan, there'll be a report to kind of really show how the work is being done, and a report back to ensure that it's being done. So that will incorporate the accountability.
Okay. So one of the things that I hear, and I remember hearing, it was really clear when the Early Learning Council went to Tillamook in July of 2015, that availability, because of geographic isolation, we'll call it that, because that's what we just put into our charter definition, that there are, did we build in funding to get geographic isolation included into this, in either of the scenarios? Because I'm not seeing it called out specifically, but I know that that's certainly a problem for many providers in areas, and then it becomes even more magnified when you add in English language learners and other culturally specific trainings.
So we'd want to look at, just to make sure I'm capturing this right, Eva, we'd want to look at calling out a percentage that would show the rural communities a little bit more. I mean, we have the square miles of the region, which we know, like in Eastern Oregon, it increases quite a bit, and the number of counties and hubs again, Eastern Oregon would get more there than what we would see in the population.
Right. I saw square miles of regions, but I wasn't sure how that computed to actually accounting for, just the geographic isolation. That, how do we build in making sure that when that's accounted for, that there's money being spent to build in more training opportunities or more.
I guess like my interpretation from what Margie said is that how the funding formula is accounting for that?
Right.
By looking at the counties, looking at the square mile, is that the accounting measure that they use?
Right. Instead of just saying square miles, like maybe having
we used to use a density discussion around frontier counties versus rural counties, where you have such small density, small numbers like Sherman County. It's only about 2,300 people still living there. Then you have very few providers and not many people per square mile, which was a different kind of funding for kind of question years past. The minimum grant counties, we used to call it like that, were always in the position of arguing that our lack of density causes all of our costs to go up and opportunities to go down.
And, if it's an in-person training, are we accounting for mileage as well as substitutes for the provider, and how much does that increase the cost? Yeah, have something along those lines. I think it would be good.
Historically, this has been a continual conversation in the R&Rs for many years, and this was the best scenario, as far as looking at the square miles of the region, and then to really incorporate what you're talking about. This seemed to be the best way to address it. It doesn't mean it's the only way. It's what we've gone on historically. And then in our conversations now that we have hubs during the funding formula meetings, we talked about another way to address that is to include the number of hubs and the number of counties, just to build in as much as possible that would cover, because it's a lot more travel. You have one person going to organize a training. We want our trainers to go to the location where the people are, so if that means it's in, Christmas Valley in Lake County, we want to make sure that there's a person who can go there and spend time with the cluster of providers we can find there. So this has been one of the ways that we tried to address that.
Margie, this is Sue, and I apologize that everyone else on this committee may know this. But I'm wondering, how does this funding formula end up getting applied? Is this what we would put in the RFP? So we would want the responders to look at and respond to and align with these percentages? Or is this going to be used for figuring out if we have X millions of dollars in the pie, how do we allocate those dollars among the applicants?
So I believe it to be, and if anybody else can answer, has more updated information. My understanding is that we will determine the regions. So we're in the process of determining the regions, and then secondly, we have a certain amount in the pie at this point in time, and then we allocate the funding based on these percentages. So the RFAs will go out with it'll include a data workbook so people can see, and then they'll have an allocation for the whatever region they're applying for. And then as more money comes in through the professional development ask, if indeed it does in the next biennium, then we would add to the pie and we would break down using the same formula for each region. And for those regions who have low populations, they need a funding. They will need a funding floor, so the floor will their floor will start there. Everybody will start with that floor and then grow using this formula. And those in the more rural regions wouldn't have enough for an infrastructure without that floor. So we need to make sure that's in place. So that floor money is actually deducted from the pot and then distributed out.
I have a question. Hi, Marcy. This is Sadie.
Hi.
Hi. So for the percentage of providers representing diverse language and culture, is that 10% or 15% of the total providers? Or will be providers representing diverse language and culture? Is that how, am I reading that correctly?
Yes, you are. That of the individual providers, that's the percentage of the individual providers of the data we have.
So currently, that reflects the current provider pool, or is that what these scenarios are hoping to bring into the provider pool?
It reflects the current. So it's not saying that we only have 10% representing diverse language and cultures. We're saying that 10% of the, we would take that, let's see, okay, so of the 80%, so if you have 80%, I'd have to pull up the formula itself to look at it again. Anyway, it's a whole formula that lays out showing if we have $100,000 and 80% of that is going to go into services to the early learning workforce, then 60% is calculated from the number of individual providers in that region, and then 10% is calculated for the number of, or the percentage of providers in that region who are representing diverse languages and cultures. So, or 15%.
That feels really low
and
to me.
It's the current. What was that?
Well,
Which part?
it feels 10% or 15% of providers representing diverse language and cultures feels low to me. If that's a reflection of current data, I'm wondering how, like, as we put this forward, we could be more aspirational about that piece.
So I want to make sure so it the 10% and the 15%, are you saying that it should be higher? Because it's not, at this formula isn't saying that we're going to strive, it's how the money's breaking down. It's not, it isn't like a goal to reach more. You see what I'm saying?
Is it a floor, not a ceiling?
Pardon me?
Is a floor, not a ceiling?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess quite.
Sorry, I'd like to see a greater investment in supporting early learning.
Okay.
Is what I'm saying. I'm not sure if I'm understanding.
A greater percentage,
Okay.
Greater percentage served.
Got it.
Oh, a greater percentage of the money. I think I remember at 2 meetings ago when David shared with us just some quick statistics about early learning providers, that they're more diverse than the adult population in Oregon, yet not quite as diverse as the children we serve. So I'd like to see our investment reflect that.
And I think also there's a piece for me where, again, this may not be reflecting the exact number, the percentage of numbers, or the percentage of dollars that's going to be spent on these populations. However, I don't want it to be interpreted as, you know, oh, we have 15% of this bucket per se to serve these populations. I don't know. It's just landing weird, and maybe it's because I'm not fully understanding what's being represented on the page. But it seems as if this funding formula is stating that 15% of the fund should be allocated out of that 80% to supporting providers representing diverse languages and culture. and that seems low, being because of the fact that our providers compare, even just if we're going to compare to the K-12 system, we have a larger percentage, and we know that the numbers will be exponentially growing via via our populations and the providers that we're pulling in. So I would like a deeper conversation around, like, if that's what we're representing, then we may want to dig into that a little bit more. Yeah,
and thanks, Lillian. And it's clear, I know what you're asking now, is that there's a higher percentage that is representing the diversity. And just to clarify, this funding formula isn't saying that 15% will be focused on diverse populations, that 15% of the money will go towards. It's really about looking at the number that now is represented, and like the 15% would provide more money, but it doesn't mean that money goes just to that group. Overall, the priority is going to be diversity across the board. So it's basically just finding a way to allocate the funding, and following the guiding principles of ensuring that there's infrastructure money too, so that we know that in Southern Oregon, for example, they'll have a goal of increasing the number of child care providers who represent the Latino population in order to find a balance and align with the percentage of children who are Latino population. So you see what I'm saying, that overall is going to be required in their work plan. Yeah. This is just finding a way to allocate. But yeah, to increase it, we could definitely look at the different ways of doing that.
I think I understand where you're getting from, because we have a current pot of money. This is what we're using to weight the formula in order to allot funds to each region, and then from that allocation of funds, they're going to be tasked to living up to the principles that have been identified, and their work plans will showcase that, or they will have to showcase that within their work plans in order to have the funds released.
Right, right. Yeah, but I can certainly, if you want me to look at some scenarios that increase these, as well as I know that there was also a suggestion to move the diverse populations of children under professional development. We can look at all of those different layouts as well. So, and see what it looks like. The funding, kind of keeping in mind the guiding principles as well of the infrastructure.
So Margie, the 80-20 is pretty much the framework that folks have agreed to, I guess. And I'm following Lillian's point, is that the percentages really speak to the weights in those two categories.
Right, right.
And if you were to move, for instance, if you were to move diverse populations up to the professional development category, that would move the numbers around still. And as Eva said, if you put density or number of providers in the collaboration group of 20%, there's a lot of different ways in which these numbers can move around, I hear you saying. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and the R&R focus has changed, where at one point there was a third percentage in there. It was divided differently, obviously, and that was for the child care referrals, which is now being done by 2-in-1.
Right.
And the focus was to increase the work on professional development. That is really the biggest bucket of work for the R&Rs now, and that's for our early educators to really advance in their quality, their quality program. So this is just the funding formula. I noticed it's 20 to 11, and I know you go until 11. We also have the scope of activities and the evaluation rubric. And I'm thinking maybe, I'm not sure about next steps, so Eva or Carol, if you could guide me, but I'm wondering if perhaps we could go over the evaluation rubric, which really gives details. If you have the scope of activities in front of you and kind of want to have them side by side, I'm thinking it might be a good idea to, actually let's start with the scope of activities and the guiding principles. Let's start there. And it's going to take me a minute, sorry. I really need to do something about these screens and my mouth. So the scope of activities, actually, it's not working for me right now. So let's just take a look at this, and if you've got the document in front of you. How we've laid this out is an introduction, of course, with our goals, which is what we're trying to always keep in front of us, and what we're seeking to do. And then we have a list of guiding principles. And so the guiding, what we're asking them to do is as they write their plan, they've got to incorporate these guiding principles. It's what's guiding the work. So at the bottom of page 1, we have work in partnership. And I did want to just mention that we did a survey at one point, and I'm not too sure when it was done, but we asked providers what they wanted to be called, and overwhelmingly they liked being called early educators. So we're starting to really build that language in. The other thing I just want to mention is when I sent this to Carol, we didn't have the official announcement of Spark yet. So you'll see QRIS is still there, but in the newest draft that's going to DOJ today, it has Spark. So just wanted you to know that. So, so work in partnership with the early educators, individually and collectively to create their professional development goals, program goals, training options. And this is that piece that we talked a little bit about earlier, and that is meeting them where they are in the professional development continuum and providing them with the level of services they need. Applying the Oregon Equity Lens, that's a hyperlink to the lens itself. And we're asking that the contractor, the applicant, it's their lead agency that is also really applying the Oregon Equity Lens. Ensure that staff are culturally and linguistically responsive, and the agency adopts equity policies and procedures. Then the learning, the individual learning style, so recognizing that our early learning workforce, and understanding adult learning practices and best practices for training. Treat all professional development training as an opportunity for mutual learning and give and take. And then recruiting the early educators to reflect the racial, cultural, and linguistic diversity of the region and increasing the quality. Capitalize on strengths and talents in the community, and this is where we're asking them to work with community-based organizations to provide training, who serve and provide professional development to diverse workforce. So in essence, we would want the R&Rs to contract with other organizations that serve a diverse population and have a close relationship. Also work with a variety of sectors in the early learning field so that if there are professional development opportunities, they include other, not just the child care providers, but also Head Start, home visitors, early intervention. The NAEYC's Code of Ethics, that's a really important piece that we ask our R&Rs to incorporate in their service delivery. We would want the R&Rs to be the community expertise for our child care providers. Use the technology for services that address the needs of families and providers in rural and distant communities. Actively participate in community collaboration. And then the collective impact framework, the early learning hubs have been really incorporating that. We're asking the R&Rs to get on board with that as well. Also to be a learning organization. We're asking the R&Rs to step out of their silos and out of their boxes and to really look at understanding they're part of the early learning system. So, and it's going to be continuous quality improvement. And then really to be innovative in their approach, innovative and creative, and to respond to change in positive ways. So that's the overarching guiding principles that we want to see embedded throughout the application. And what I'd like to do is if you just keep your scope of activities in front of you, we then break it down. And if you go on to page 3, we break it down into 2 goals. The first one is the professional development goal, and that is supporting a high-quality, diverse early learning workforce, and that's meeting them where they are in the professional development continuum. And then that's divided into 3 categories. It's divided into recruitment, training and professional development, and retention. And so if we now take a look at the evaluation rubric, the scope of activities has a more overarching viewpoint on that, and we're going to ask them to write to it. But if you look at the evaluation rubric, it really breaks it down into much more detail.
Gotcha.
Pardon me? So you can see all the points here. These are what we're expecting to see in the recruitment process. So to demonstrate to us how they are going to do this, or maybe for some of them how they're already doing it and plan to continue.
Yeah, so within this, within the RFA process, are you going to be engaging, or will there be questions that will ask will ask these programs to reflect on past practices or shifts that they're making from past practices to current practices within this? Or is that just out?
Actually, no, we haven't. But Lillian, I love that. So I'm going to just capture it. So reflect on current practices and what would be the shift.
Yeah, because I guess for me, in kind of filling out anything of this nature is really getting at what are we asking them to do differently, if this is something different that they need to do, and really articulate how do they plan to go about that work. They may not have all the details, but there has to be, some type of, exploration on like what would shifting a practice mean in order to meet these new goals if they haven't been doing this in the past, or if they're building off of already like great ways of how they're doing it and enhancing it for the next biennium.
Right. One of the things we've tried to stay cognizant about is that this, since it's open competitive, different organizations could actually apply. And so although I really like how you worded that, because even if it's different organizations who have never done R&R services, we'd want to know that what was their foundation, for these practices, and then how will you build on it.
Yeah, because I guess for me, this could go for any program. I mean, like if you are applying to do these services, then there has to be some type of emphasis saying that like, I've done this before, I feel confident in this, and I feel like I have the foundations in order to enhance what I'm doing if I'm not currently providing all of these services within a region. There has to be something there.
Yeah, okay. I think that's great. I've captured that. I'm going to build that in. And I think it might be a good idea to also add it into the guiding principles. a phrase, a statement, overarching statement that's going to kind of guide them to that. So, and I also want to say, oh, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to reinforce what Lillian said, because some of the organizations doing R&R have been doing it for 20 years. And all organizations have a particular growth pattern. I would love to see them in the application identify the expectations that you have lined out as where their growth would need to occur. Acknowledging what you don't know and where you got to grow would be important to, I think, being a good applicant.
Okay. I like that. So that's great. Thank you.
This is Joyce. I think that approach also allows them to take a look at what they're currently doing and looking at what they need to do to get to where they want to be in terms of meeting the expectations of the RFA. I found that to be very useful in some of the work that I've done when I've worked with districts. You know, unfortunately, some who have had civil rights complaints. It's like, this is where you are now. Now, what do you need to do to get from where you are now to where you need to be? And that is a less threatening approach for people, because it acknowledges what they currently are doing that might be okay, but now you're wanting them to, you know, scale it up, you know, and take a. So it's a good tool, yeah, for the applicant, even if they don't get funded, you know, they can still report on that these are some things that we need to do.
That is so. Go ahead.
And my question, because I'm jumping in because we're at 10:50 and we still need to have a few minutes of discussion about next meeting. So for retention, I think that I definitely see a role in how CCR&Rs can help retain through making sure that there is a change in curriculum, because one of the complaints that I hear about from providers is like, it's the same 5 trainings, and I'm, you know, like for my license, I'm supposed to take X number of hours every year, but I'm tired of taking things to do in the rain, or I'm making that up, but it's the rain today. But you know, like, so I guess retention might, you know, but outside of, you know, building curriculums and programs that, you know, keep providers interested and engaged, what is the responsibility for retention on the CCR&Rs? Because a lot of that will go to hubs and other incentives at the early learning division that will be doing, you know, and you know, the legislature and federal government, probably not, to build in incentives. And a lot of providers do love the work that they do, but they're finding it hard to continue to make ends meet, so therefore, you know, they seek other job opportunities outside of early learning.
And I think what I really love about the rubric is it narrows the scope for what a CCR&R can do. Like, you know, you can't do everything, but I do like some of the areas where it's like, oh, this is like, you know, the measurement of retention for CCR&R looks like this.
Those just didn't get that far. Clearly, I was not being an overachiever.
See, Margie, my last comment, because I know we have to go, is that some school districts like ours are really embracing the early learning as part of our work. We really are babies through 21 kind of organization. We do kindergarten. We want to do kindergarten. We want kindergarten to be an early learning, an early child development enterprise, and not like third grade. And so I would encourage wherever the principals or wherever that you can have the R&R, and you said something about they have a catalytic or leadership role, I would love to see the R&Rs know kindergarten well, and vice versa.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean,
and that, I'm kind of, that's a great community collaboration piece along with professional development. I kind of see an overlap there. It's getting out of the silos and connecting with the schools in a different way.
Those of us like Redmond and Pendleton and Gladstone that have moved their kindergartens out of elementary schools and into early learning centers. Illustrates those school secretaries ought to know R&R folks by their first name. That's who runs the school.
Basically.
Yeah. Just 2 cents for...
Well, and Margie, as you pointed out, or somebody pointed out, that child care doesn't just cover early learning. They do provide care for school age too.
And you find an elementary school secretary, and you'll find on her desk a vinyl sheet with her 5 favorite child care providers that she refers to every day. And doesn't...
Yeah.
Another call. 211.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been going on for a long time. That happens with DHS too. DHS will do the same. They'll get a list and hand them out. And me being an R&R person, I get on my soapbox about where's the quality piece? How do you know it's accurate? How do you know it's right information? So, but building the partnerships and community collaboration where there's an understanding that R&Rs are the expertise for this, that they're turned to in that way would be a big part of it. So I wanted to also share with you that as the team has been working on this, we have had the Oregon Equity Lens, and we also have a whole list of definitions that's included with this. We've had the Oregon Equity Lens, we've had the Equity Toolkit, and we've had the self-assessment in front of us, and we've been trying to pull in that language and ensuring that it's embedded throughout. And I guess I'm hoping that, I know we're running out of time, but I'm hoping if anyone can collect comments. I've been capturing what you've been sharing today, and I've got some great, Joyce, what you talked about as far as looking at where are they now and what will they build. I can really see that a big part of the plan narrative to guide them in that, each category. And maybe looking at some different funding formula layouts and really identifying the priorities and moving that forward. And just hoping you can look at the language in this rubric as well as the scope of activities, which is a little more high overarching, and share with me what I might be missing. That would be really great.
So I would just because we're running out of time, I would offer that you guys can send that feedback to Margie just directly to me. Don't respond to the group because Carmen is on that list, and so we don't want her to feel like we're including her in something she doesn't want to be, she's trying to recuse herself from. So just send them to me. I'll send them to you, Margie, and then we can keep building from there. Is that fair?
That'd be great. I really appreciate your feedback.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margie. Oh,
okay.
And it was Margie's birthday. Everybody wish Margie happy birthday.
Thanks.
You're
Thanks.
Go. I know. I always forget my birthday.
I forgot my birthday too.
So I have a list.
Bye.
If we want to have a December meeting, and like that is fairly up in the air because it's on the 20th and people have holiday Eve things to do.
Right. Well, maybe we just do a quick check-in on the equity implementation charter, and then it can be by phone or WebEx or web meeting.
Okay.
And that way, nobody has to worry about getting to a specific spot if you have time to call in. And so we just make it a short meeting. And then January, do we have anything planned for January?
Well, I have a whole list of requests.
The 20th is not available. People are not available on the 20th.
Are you available?
Yeah.
I'm available, you know, work.
You work all the time.
Yeah. But we can make it a quick one. We can bring cookies. We can have, maybe we can have more of a fellowship type of meeting to get to know each other. Yeah. Or we can just work on the charter.
So, Carol, the real goal before the first year is to get...
Let me go check on my HR person because we used to have our, oh no, we wouldn't have that early morning either. Anyway.
Okay. You'll party.
Okay.
And when we can have it at your, in Gladstone too if we want, if we're talking, or we can do that in January.
Whatever, just an opportunity.
Yeah, it would be nice to be in another spot that's close in.
Sure, we have a nice conference room, and you'll get to see everything from Boston teaching preschool to kindergartners to
that'd be
all
awesome.
the lake. It's flooding all around you. I mean, it's a whole vast.
Maybe we should do that in January.
January?
Okay.
So
I'll connect you with Erica, and then we'll make that happen. So what do you want to do for December, Madame?
I mean, we don't have to meet. I mean, it's the only thing on our agenda is the charter.
These are the things that I have that are requested. So the Best Beginnings group wants to run their agnostic screening tool by you guys.
Okay.
I would love to give you the switch from Quality Rating Improvement System to Spark, which is a new branding. Spark is the quality. Yeah.
Wow.
To make it,
you're about to say, that's good.
Because we're rolling it out. Yeah. We're rolling it out slowly but surely. It's to make it easier for folks to understand what quality rating improvement system means. And so, no, it's not an acronym. It's just Spark. We want to be able to share that we have Spark rated programs, and it's a way. I'm not giving you my best talking points right now, but I'll give you the general runs, which is a lot of the community feedback we heard around the QRIS program is that the stars are a little bit intimidating for people. So if Eva's a 3, she's like, oh my God, can I get to a 5? And what that sort of
and providers are trying to come in at a 5 when they're really not ready for it.
Right.
It's costing them.
And it's costing them a lot of money. The standards are redundant in some cases. Sometimes the thing you need for a license is exactly the same thing you need for like a tier 3, which is the same thing you need for an ORO. So we're trying to get rid of some of those redundancies. We're trying to make the language easier. All of those pieces. But the beauty of Spark is Spark means quality wherever you are. So even if Eva's a 3 and Liliane is a 5, we know that both of those programs are quality and safe for kids. It's also an easy way for parents to connect. Like, oh, it's a Spark rated. When they call 211, I said, oh, it's a Spark rated program. What does that mean? Spark means quality. It means your kid's going to get quality as deemed by the state of Oregon for your kiddos. And so QRIS has always been a mouthful. Even though we have great people participating, it's always been hard to explain to parents, explain to other providers. So as we streamline the standards, we're also streamlining the name. That's my short version of what we're learning.
Love to learn more about that.
Yeah, so I'd love to do that rollout in December with you guys.
What's the timeline for the agnostic screening tool?
Well, Elizabeth, who we met last meeting, would love to do it in December.
Okay.
But I can double check with her. She just made that request.
Well,
this week.
And Janet also sent me an email from you replied to it.
So they must really want to
yeah.
get in front of us at the best beginning.
So maybe we do have a full meeting in December. I think we're going to have full meetings from here.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's feeling good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the one thing I was trying to
Not just one.
Yeah, I was trying to tell the committee, and I think some people heard me say we need to have a stable chair. But I think what I was trying to tell them right now. At this very moment, I feel stable. No, it was less about the chair per se, but more about the connection that the committee has to the full council, and like, are we actually doing work? And I think that message was heard by some people, and others they were like, oh, whatever.
Right. But the more we keep doing this level of work, the more they're going to start to understand what we're doing.
Those will come, I think. Sue showing up is a good sign.
Yeah, I was excited.
I mean, she has a million things to do. I'm sure she didn't have to.
Right. So we're going to meet on the 20th. We're going to meet on.
Do you want to do here? Can we do here?
I
mean, between the view and the screen, I think this is a really great space. Unless you want to do it at me too, which is.
Is it absolutely easy for people to get to? I know it's a little farther for you, I mean.
It's free parking.
Doesn't matter. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The worst part of the situation. I got there late.
Oh yeah, it can be challenging.
If you don't
Which road is that? 60th and Sandy or something?
60th and Burnside. Yeah.
Yeah, it
doesn't matter to me.
Okay, I can check.
It'll take you an hour and a half to get here anyway, from Hillsborough.
You know Hillsborough?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I grew up there. There's nothing.
I used to live in Oregon City.
That's a long way to
So,
go these days.
I'll build the agenda.
Yeah.
I'll send it to Eva for her approval. So we'll just work with the idea that we'll do the screening tool, revisit our charter that I will work on tightening up, and then I'll do a quick Spark official rollout for you guys
Yeah.
with
So I
logo
guess
and brand.
For the charter, just refining some language and then figuring out how do we want to build in either a vice chair or handle chair absences.
Yes.
So Carol, do we have a deadline by which if we have any other edits on the charter that we can send you so that we could go quick on the 20th and call it good?
Do you want to send them to me by the end of the month, by the end of November?
Whatever you like.
That would be great. Let's call it the last working day of November, which is the 30th. Yeah.
So we send you yours, any comments we have, you polish it up, and it's nearly done. You
Yeah.
walk in your office.
Yeah. We hopefully will just have a few things to tool.
It'd be great.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for hanging out for an additional 4 to 5 minutes.
All right.
You're on. Is anyone going to the Stanford Children Lunch right now? Oh, no. I didn't.
I think Katie was going.
At the zoo. At the zoo.
At the
Is
zoo?
he going right now?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Erica.
you.
If you're still listening, we're going to shut this bad boy down.